G'day guys, Mac with the Outer Circle, and today, the Outer Circle Guide to Salt. Okay, where am I heading with this? So, over the last few days, I've had some interesting engagement with people around the community. Some who have a reasonable YouTube presence, in fact. And I decided to re-evaluate things a little bit. Ask the question, am I just the salty asshole? Do I have some relevant points? Where do I cross the line? That kind of thing. So then I decided to, being me, try and categorize it, lay it out in some sort of chart, and focus on it, because I noticed many recurring themes in my videos. So I went back over the last couple of days in my free time and jotted down some of these recurring themes. It's pretty much the things you see before you. So there's two boxes, a red one and a green one. The green one is the things that is just accepted by the community. The red is the thing that seems to piss off people when I talk about it repeatedly. You'll notice though, on the bar up the top, that red bit is a very, very small thing. Why? Because that's how much the community seems to want to see it. It seems that the community as a whole, and I know it's a very general term saying the community, because what community? There's so many, they're so small. You have your own individual group. Then there's big conglomerates. Well, I'm trying to talk about the general YouTube circle that seems to mostly interact with my videos when I say community. So, on the one end, we have the salt. That's where I fit in. On the other end, you have the simp. And now, I've given it a massive green bar compared to a little red bar. The reason I've done this is because, to be honest, most people who are creating content live in that green area. The people who live in that yellow area, they're out there. I'd put someone like Kirioth, into that yellow bar where has positive things to say, but also has critical things he can say. I myself, I seem to fit mostly into that red bar. Look at the list. So I'm definitely the salty end of the spectrum. But that simp end, let's talk about that for a moment. So why do I think it's so prevalent? Well, take a look at some of the groups that exist out there when you go onto something like Facebook, for instance. If you go into an Adeptus Titanicus group, there are many of them. Almost every one of them has rules against putting epic miniatures on your bases, stuff you've 3D printed, sharing your 3D files in those groups, etc., etc. Those groups are practically shepherding the Games Workshop IP. They want to see only Games Workshop's plastic Titans. They don't even want to see the old Games Workshop white metal Titans. They're not interested in that stuff. It's insane to see. This is not a blanket rule, but it's something that's very common, and I'm sure there are plenty of people who will be able to get onto the comments in this video and say, hey, I know one of these groups. I've been on it. I had some old, might be epic Space Marine tanks, the old plastic epic Land Raiders and such, on the base my Titan was walking on. My pick got banned from the group because it was promoting recast or something like that. That is out there. Recast's a great topic as well. People don't want to talk about recasts, not mention them, pretend they don't exist. Well, they do exist. There's a reason why they exist. And these same people, though, when you see their private Facebook stories, are talking about how they pirate movies and TV shows because they don't want to wait for them. Oh, I don't getting Disney Plus. I'm just going to download The Mandalorian. Oh, okay. And that's different to recasting an out-of-production Games Workshop miniature how? So, there's a lot of hypocrisy out there. And I think there is a lot of content creators who are skewed towards that green end, especially when you start factoring in the amount of free content they give versus the constructive feedback you hear from them. Okay? I would even put someone like Valrak in the yellow bar. A lot of people think he's a shill. I still maintain the guy is just passionate. So, yeah, he leans towards the green part of that yellow spectrum, but he's in that yellow zone. Now, let's talk about me and the red zone and self-reflection. Because there are things I do badly that I should improve upon, and people make some valid points there. So, we'll go through the list. First of all, top left, I spoke with Arch. That seems to be incredibly divisive for people. For some, he's a Yahtzee, white supremacist, yada yada. Look, I don't care. If he was actively out there constantly doing something, putting it in your face, yeah, I would care. But frankly, all the evidence I've been shown, quote unquote evidence, is pretty damn muddy at best. Even if he was a terrible human being, you're saying that I can't talk to this person. You're deciding my content for me, that I can't talk to that person, that their actions are so irredeemable that they have to be just excised from existence and not allowed to participate in society. That to me seems very counterproductive. For people that talk about inclusivity and all this mumbo jumbo, you then want to exclude someone because they don't hold the same values that you do. Even if a person is a pretty bad person, I still think it's worth giving them the time of day, because if they do espouse those views to you directly, you can talk to them about it, you can shout them down, you can say, no, you need to change your attitude. But you're never going to do that if every time they open their mouth, you just block communication with them, or you try and deplatform them or things. I think it's unhealthy to be that way. So I'm happy to keep talking with Arch. If people have a problem with that, that's perfectly fine. You're welcome to go elsewhere, but I think there is nothing wrong. He's never come on this channel and espoused anything bad on this channel. So why would I treat him as anything other than the good person that he's been towards me? Next on the list, delayed FAQs, errata, and fixes. So this is something I harp on about a lot. Am I wrong? No, cool, let's move on. Forge World / Games Workshop not giving equal support to factions. So, I've made a big deal of this lately, whether it's models, whether it's game mechanics, such as releasing codexes, things like that. Again, am I wrong? Now, there might be reasons for that. Let's not beat around the bush. There are reasons. Maybe it's sales driven. Okay, that's a great one that people like to point out. I will also point out, though, that many of the objections people have with the statements I make are that, well, they have one defense mechanism. That defense mechanism is Games Workshop is a company, they exist to make money. This is true. However, money does not need to be made necessarily in ways that go against what the community wants or needs. Okay? So, it's not good enough to simply say that, hey, Marines make money, therefore we'll keep spending all our resources producing Space Marine content, because something's got to give at some point. It's not saying that you can make money, basically, is what I'm getting at, doing something other than Marines. It can be done. Okay? I think Sisters of Battle is a great example of that. They had no problem shipping Sisters of Battle. Okay? They had no problem shipping the re-release of Necrons. If they did a re-release of Eldar, I'm quite certain that the Craft Worlds would sell like hotcakes. Yeah, okay, they won't sell as many models as the Space Marines, but people are used to getting constant floods of new models from the Space Marines and not getting anything from those other factions. So people are more hesitant, naturally, to go to those other factions. I think it's a pretty fair thing to say. Anyway, direction of the hobby. This refers to, well, a few things, but we'll say the way that the company is approaching things. So it could be their marketing. They clearly market a lot of their imagery and language towards children, but children and teenagers can't afford this product, and they're probably not stumbling onto Games Workshop's Warhammer community page randomly via the internet. They could be. They definitely could be. There would be plenty out there, I'm sure, who have, but I would say they're more the exception than the rule. So I have a fundamental problem with things like that and how they market, because it seems like they've priced those people out of the market. And that worries me, because that's the next generation. For the hobby to survive and thrive, and for me to be in my 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever, and still have up-and-coming people to, introduce the game to, that's not happening with the current way that the hobby is heading, in my opinion. Now, that's the thing. Like everything I say on these shows, it's an opinion. So you've got to take that with a grain of salt. You can't say, oh, I'm just salty, because I am entitled to that opinion. It may be the wrong opinion, but I'm entitled to it. Another one is Warhammer community being anything but a community. So I think that speaks for itself. All communication is entirely one way. It is an advertising platform. We've demonstrably proved this. Therefore, I won't go into it any further. Next, we have factions/game mechanics, which have been completely broken. As people be well aware, there are plenty of factions which are completely overpowered, overhyped on day one. They don't get fixed until outside of their release cycle. It just so happens that they don't have the data, the tooling, the resources, whatever, to fix an overpowered release when it comes out. Probably you could attribute malice to it and say that because that drives sales. Could be true, could not be true, who knows. But at the end of the day, they take month to months to fix problems in their game, which damage the game as a whole. It causes huge meta shifts, is often the big thing, especially in 40k community. People want to talk about toxicity. It exists in the 40k community because people are being encouraged to go for the most overpowered faction if they want to remain competitive with other forces. It's very hard to take an old, unloved list up against the new hotness. Again, I don't think I'm saying anything here that's not objectively true. Next, the lack of direction/lack of company communication. So this one's a big one for the Horus Heresy. I see a lot of people saying, hey, don't be annoyed that the Sons of Horus got a new console because all the legions are getting consoles. Who said that? Where is the Warhammer community article which says all legions getting consoles? And that's the heading. I haven't seen that. They've said that there's plenty to come and, words to that effect. They haven't said black and white, all legions are getting consoles. And especially, what I mean by lack of direction, they're not telling us what the cycle is and giving us an idea of what's to come, so we, the community, can plan around that, save up money, for example, or purchase what we want to. For a company that's supposed to have a community portal and have good community engagement, this is probably where they fall down the hardest, because it's very easy to say to people, put up a picture, just a teaser picture, a good quality, high definition one of a new Horus Heresy box set. And then they don't need to say anything else. They can just let the rumors fly. It is better than some grainy, horrible picture, because it will help to build up the fluff, because people will know, yes, it is coming, as opposed to right now where everyone is just spreading rumors, lies, and misinformation. Next, price rises with no benefit. I think this one speaks for itself. Bought a box of Khorne Berserkers or Eldar Guardians lately? Cool, they're from the late 90s, early 2000s, if you're lucky. So, do you think you should be paying 3 times more for those units that came out then? Do you think they're constantly making a new die that they need to recoup costs on and such? No, the die is the most expensive part of the process. They paid that off decades ago. They're raising the prices because they can. And I've gone through, mapped it, shown the data, shown the research on this show to prove, beyond benefit of the doubt, that the prices are rising greater than inflation, and every time inflation finally starts to catch up to the price, they move the bar again. So they produce excellent revenue, and then slowly that revenue starts to creep down as the inflation rate creeps up, and then just the inflation rate's about to match their price rise, they raise the prices again. So their revenue is huge, the gain, whenever they do a price rise, and they're not small price rises, guys. If your product costs $100, you should be having like a $2 price rise, maybe $2.50 to counter for inflation. They do on $100 products $5 and $10 price rises. So 2 to 3 times inflation is what you often see, even as high as 4 times inflation. And they've been doing that for 30 years. Again, I think that's pretty damn objective. That's what they've been doing, and have not improved the product at the same time. There are some kits that are fantastic and new and great, yes, but price rises are not making those things better. They're making old units more expensive, as well as removing miniatures from the boxes, which is even worse. Next one, crude, belittling language. This is another thing that is often done on this channel. I am very crude and belittling, especially people who I think are idiots because they don't hold the same opinion as me, and that's not a fair thing for me to do. So that is somewhere I need to improve. But I will say, to an extent, the crude language, I'm Australian, give me a fucking break. It's how we talk. It is not a social faux pas to swear in this country. Yes, there are settings where it is a social faux pas, but swearing is used for emphasis, not to be derogatory in Australia. So, to call someone a mad C, as in a mad, well, that is not derogatory. It's saying they're an awesome person. And it's just socially acceptable to say, hey, C, get over here. Oi, what's up, C? It's more insulting in this country to say, hey, champ, get over here. That is a big insult. So, spare a little thought for our cultural eccentricities, we'll say. Next, direction of the story. So, the direction of the story is something I fundamentally disagree with. It is incredibly subjective, however. I think I've laid out pretty fair and reasonable arguments as for why it's not progressing in a good way, and it probably should end there. So that is maybe something I can fix by just not speaking about it anymore, but that will be very hard for me to do because it constantly brings me displeasure. Next, the company not representing units/models correctly in rules or articles on them. A lesser gripe, but a pet peeve I've noticed actually popping up very frequently, to the point where it's had whole videos done on it, where they are calling units the wrong names, they're putting out the wrong rules with said units, things like that. Some people say, look, it's not fair, it's just some guy in the marketing department, it's not his fault. I don't care. If I was to release a product with a certain set of specifications, and the customer's got a hold of it, I'm accountable for releasing it with those specifications, whether or not I'm some lowly paid intern. It doesn't matter. I did that. Okay. If the customer, I don't know, it could be something really silly. I say that this is a 4-piece lawnmower blade. It has 4 blades on it. I don't sell lawnmowers, but if I said, here's a lawnmower blade, it's got 4 sides, and the customer says, this doesn't have 4 blades, they can sue you because you falsely advertised something. Well, the company, they do similar things, not to the same degree, let's say that, but you get situations where, they call the arm marks the wrong name and things like that in their advertising they put out there, or they call units the wrong name, or they call something the wrong legion. Happens all the time. And it's just very unprofessional when you consider the size of the company. Something like that you would completely forgive if it was like a mum and dad startup. It was some Kickstarter you were backing, okay? And they had $1,000 to their name. But when it's $1 billion corporation, I think it's unforgivable, so I harp on it. I will try not to in the future. Another one that I harp on about, though, is massive dilution of the product range. So, keeping in line with the people saying that, hey, there's new products coming out. Okay, they've released 2 consoles for the Imperial Fists. They've released a couple of consoles for the Sons of Horus, as well as Malagurst, as well as Argyle. 7, 8 characters right there. Yep, that's something. How many Mark II miniatures did they remove in the last chance to buy? How many Elysian drop troops? How many Death Corps of Krieg that went, and then they came back, and then some bits went again? And what about the Talrand range? Anyone remember the Talrand range from Forge World? So, yes, we're getting new content for the Heresy, one could say, but for a game that's been out for coming up on 10 years, I was talking to a person on Sunday. Kat and I were talking to a person, actually, friendly chat, who this gentleman plays Horus Heresy. He's 21 years old. Kat and I were finishing playing in Warhammer 40k tournaments 10 years ago. We were in our 20s going, you know what, this isn't for us anymore because we don't like the direction of things. And mainly the way that the community felt to be around was we felt toxic. So we were pulling away from that. And this guy wasn't even in high school, let alone collecting Warhammer at the time. And he's in the game now, and he's collecting Horus Heresy. And, depending on the Legion he wants, there could be models that Legion rules were released before he was in high school. Like, Salamander's Raven Guard immediately come to mind. and he can't even use consoles for those factions today. So, on top of that, you got factions that he might have been into, like Chaos Dwarves, for example. They've disappeared thanks to Last Chance to Buy. So he's never going to get the chance to go there. So the massive dilution of the product range is not made up for by some minimal amounts of new products coming out. My opinion on that will change once they flesh out the thing a lot more, bring out a lot more new miniatures. I'll definitely change my opinion on that. I'm not a stationary point. I am capable of moving my opinions, but they need to do a damn lot more than bring out half dozen consoles. Next, big thing is increased delays and creep existing pre-COVID. So something I've pointed out is that many of the problems we have were problems prior to COVID. COVID may have exacerbated them, or it may have had no hand in them. It doesn't matter. Many problems existed prior. You could look at, say, Horus Heresy FAQ, last updated, I think it was 2019. What was it? It was March or February 2019, something like that. So we're coming up on 3 years. Okay, it's for three years early next year. That is a long time. It is a PDF document. Someone can sit there on their lunch break, type up the new one. The community has, again, written all the answers down. All it takes is someone to actually sit there and just pop them up on the Warhammer website. But they have failed to do this, and I think pointing something like that out is not necessarily a bad thing. Next point I often bring up is day one failures. So a day one failure, what do I mean by that? Well, there's little things like, okay, the full stop's in the wrong part of a sentence. Who cares? That's a nothing. My problem is when they release something on day one and it does not work. So a great example of that is White Scars. I often use this example, so forgive me if you've heard it before. They bring out a Rite of War, so a way of running the White Scars. It's called the Chugorian Brotherhood, and it's based around jet bikes and bike warfare. But this Rite of War, due to its specific criteria, will not allow Jagadai Khan, the Primarch, the guy who taught them this aspect of war, to actually run that force. So that is a day one failure. And I'm pretty damn certain it's also not been fixed since. There's other things, like his bike has 2 heavy bolters. You're only allowed to fire 1 weapon, unless otherwise stated in any shooting phase. So he has a single heavy bolter on his bike, not 2. Another thing with White Scars is you have Evan Keshi, where you have the Karash special rule on them, where only characters who have that special rule may join them, but no other characters in the game have that. Including special characters who you think should be able to have it, like Chinza, the master of the Keshig, the head of the Order. So, major problems that come out on day one. Those are things that shouldn't exist if you have any kind of decent editing service, and hopefully they're headed that way. Again, I think it's an objective reality, but this is where I get into trouble with the next statement, which is, I treat many things as objective facts, when often I'm spouting opinions. So that is a bad habit of mine that needs fixing. Examples of this is, I might say that something is objectively a shit model. Well, is it a shit model if a lot of people like it? No, I'm certain that people like some of those Space Wolf models from Forge World with the banana armor. That's banana armor, not banana armor, the 1980s chick band. Geez, would they make good models for the Horus Heresy? Anyway, other thoughts for another time. Saying something like, they're objectively shit, that's not fair. There can be objective problems with something, not necessarily saying they're objectively shit. It's not proving my point efficiently, so I need to work on that. And the last thing that I often bring up and point out, and I probably will continue to do so because it is a piece of salt grinding away in my eyes, the better service, faster shipping. Forge World's big tagline when they went to regional pricing structures, which gave zero benefit to the consumers and put a pineapple up the backside of them at the same time. Because the whole reason they tried to sell this to us was they said, no, you're going to be looked after, you'll be getting your models faster, the service will be better. Even before again, leaning into the increased delays and creep pre-COVID, even before COVID, it was taking people 20 to 30 days to get products dispatched. That is not better service, faster shipping. That's the same level of service and shipping that there's always been. If they're increasing the prices but didn't put on additional staff or organise for a better mailing service, then the same problems exist. You're just charging people more for the product. And in Australia, where it's like $50 now to get a decal sheet from Forge World, I think that's a big, big problem. Because, frankly, it doesn't matter if they're mailing it to Australia or they're mailing it to a guy who lives across the street from Warhammer World in Nottingham. It's costing them the same amount to write an address on that envelope or print it out and stick it on the envelope and throw it in the mailbox as it is to, the mail itself to come to Australia will cost more. What is the difference in postage costs sending a letter across the street versus around the world? $5, maybe? I know for me it costs like $3 to send something from Australia to the United States, and it costs like $1.20 to send it to mum's house. It's not a huge difference in price, and yet we see like a $20 difference in price. So I will die on that hill. I'm sorry. So now we've been through the things I harp on about and some failings of mine. Let's talk about the good things. Instagram. So our Instagram is almost entirely, apart from the odd meme, entirely hobby devoted. We only show work in progress shots, the stuff we're painting, and talk with the community on there. People send us their pictures of their armies, their miniatures. They talk about their army lists. It's great. We love interacting with people on Instagram. That is something really positive we do, and I can't see any downsides to it. Then, army showcases. Kat and I love doing the army showcases, but for all the talk of we're only ever salty, we're only ever negative, not that many people go and actually watch the showcases. We're pretty much just making them for us, which is probably true of a lot of the content on this channel, is we make it for us. We don't make it... It's a funny thing. People say we are here to exploit the algorithm on YouTube. If we're there to exploit the algorithm on YouTube, why are we doing army showcases, which net... Okay, I had an army showcase, or Kat had one, which was 1/70th of the viewership of one of my other videos. A video that was going over the history and problems with a faction. Okay, the What Broke the Fans Corn video. That video had 70 times the views. Yeah, it's been out for a lot longer. But, if we really want to try and, farm the algorithm to, make money, gain some kind of YouTube notoriety. I don't know how society measures things, but apparently we're gaming it. Then we're doing a terrible job by focusing on things like army showcases, which only the truly passionate will get into and watch. But we will not stop doing them because we love doing them. Something else I've done, which I'm really proud of, is the Getting in Horus Heresy Starter Series. Or Getting Started in Horus Heresy. I wrote it in a very Yoda-ish way. 1 and 2. So Series 1 was the original game, included things like Portrayal at Kelth, Burning of Prospero. Without those in existence anymore, and with the looming threat that where they're no longer going to be making the black books from Forge World, I created a second series in order to cover off on the new direction the game is going in, trying to adapt to those circumstances so that I don't confuse people who come looking for advice on the Horus Heresy, so that they can get into the series, hopefully, and get useful information, because some of the other videos are getting very old and very long in the tooth for people. Another thing is the Army Rundown. So the Army Rundown is different to the Army Showcase. The Army Showcase is going around and looking at people's armies at events, talking about how they created it, conversions, things like that. The Army Rundown is where I'll sit there, put out one of my armies, and give you the chance to critique my work the way I critique other people's work. Because it's not fair of me to talk about other people's stuff if I'm not willing to put my own stuff in that same situation. That's just a point of moral integrity for me. So I go through that. I talk about my thought process behind it, and it also gives people a bit of a chance to see how I think and how I perform my hobby. So it informs the viewer of, maybe, just maybe, how passionate I actually am about these things. On top of that, we have the hobby tutorials. So again, very low viewership. But if I think I have something that's less common, or I have something in particular I want to talk about, usually something quick, I try and create a tutorial for it. And the whole idea behind a quick tutorial is there are so many great tutorials out there. Okay, whether you go to Little Legend Studio, whether you go to Cult of Paint, whether you watch Ben Comets, Angel Giraldez, all these people who do fantastic work. Games Workshop, they do good tutorials. They all offer their own thing. What I try to do is trying to offer something outside of that. So I did one on painting Necromunda bases in like 5 minutes. The whole point of it being that, hey, people find basing really tedious. Can I show them a way to really quickly make good looking and effective bases? The answer was yes. So I did it because I want to encourage people to actually go out there and try and complete their projects. Another good thing that I think I do is the theme and construction advice. So people often, like I said on Instagram, they come to us, they say, here's what I want to do with my army, here's the list I'm thinking of, what do you think? And we'll give them feedback. We'll often say things like, do you want to, is it a friendly event you're going to? Yeah, it is. Well, do you want to take 3 Leviathans to a friendly event? No, you probably don't. So I would avoid that. I'm not going to tell you how to make your list, but here's how I would make it if I were you. So that's something positive I think we do. So to sum it up, these 2 that I've highlighted are the big things that I need to change about my attitude. Crude, belittling language and treating things as objective facts. Those are the big 2 because they are repeated throughout my videography. So I will work on it. No promises, because changing a habit takes a long time. But being honest with myself is at least a step in the right direction, and it's good to have the opportunity to critique myself. But that said, all those other red box area things, the things that are the no-nos, the taboo subjects that people don't like talking about in Warhammer groups, the things that get me the reputation for the only negative, apart from Spoke with Arch, I want people to point out what they think is wrong with that. Because you may call it negative, maybe because the amount I bring it up, I don't know. That definitely would be a factor, but it seems I have to keep bringing it up because the same problems occur. That's the way my logic is. But point out which of those is completely false. Point out to what degree any of them is false, actually. I'd be very interested to see the answers in the comments below. Because I think basically everything up there, except for Spoke with Arch, is a problem. While some may like the direction of the story, I think we can almost universally agree the story was better in the past, more coherent, and the universe, the physical models and the background story synced up a lot better. But again, I can't treat that as an objective fact because it is not. That's just my hypothesis, my educated guess. Okay? It's not the truth of the matter. But, Warhammer community. Do you think it's a community? Do you think you get meaningful two-directional communication with them? Massive dilution of the product range. Is that not a problem? Game mechanics which are completely broken. Is that a problem? I want to know what you think. Also, is there other stuff that's bad behavior of mine that should be up on this list that I often do, which really needs to be fixed, that hasn't been mentioned here? Maybe I missed it. Maybe it's because my ego is too great. Who knows? But add it on there. Be curious about that. And also other things that we do that you think are positive. And I guess, do you think the positives outweigh the negatives? I mean, there's a lot of negatives in there. But I'm talking about the actions of a company that is not a charity. And people forget that. They say you should be grateful for what you got. Well, no, I don't need to be grateful for it because I've got to pay for it. Anything I have to pay for, well, they need to do themselves a service, basically, because they want my money. If they want my money, they've got to impress me. And if I'm not impressed, well, it's not a charity. I'm not here to just give them money because they produced a product. I think that's fair to say. Anyway, I'm Mr. Circle, the the saltiest guy on the internet who somehow turned this into a chart, but I'm going to put it up as video anyway, even though it should probably be in a fire burning in my delete box on my desktop, but it is what it is. And do you think the bar up the top is wrong? That's the other thing. Do you think that the negative YouTubers is actually a far, far greater proportion than it is? Or at least, perhaps I'm representing the viewership of the YouTubers. So the negative YouTubers get a lot less viewership than the overly positive ones, we'll call them. The ones who get the free sets all the time. And the meanest thing they might have to say about Games Workshop is, oh, there's a lot of parts on this sprue. Anyway, thoughts and comments below, guys. Thank you all for watching the video. Hope you got something out of it, or get a bit of an insight at least into how I think. And I'll see you all on the next one.